All right, and moving on, U.S. Senate voted down a pair of resolutions to prevent weapons sale to Israel. But voting pattern demonstrated a shift in Democratic Party's approach towards Israel. 40 out of 47 Senate Democrats voted in favor of a resolution to block a $295 million sale of bulldozers. 59 senators, mostly Republicans, voted against blocking the sale. The resolution was introduced by Senator Bernie Sanders, who said that these bulldozers would be used to demolish homes in occupied West Bank, Gaza and Lebanon. 36 Democrats backed another resolution aimed at blocking sale of 1,000-pound bombs to the Israeli military. 63 senators voted against blocking the sale. Similar resolutions by Sanders in 2024 and 2025 were also rejected. But the number of Democrats voting for them has more than doubled now. According to Axios, a growing number of lawmakers are saying that they can no longer support U.S. funding for even the country's defensive weaponry. The Senate also rejected a resolution that would constrain President Donald Trump's ability to launch future military action against Iran without congressional approval. Now, the War Powers resolution failed on a vote of 47 to 52. Senator Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote in favor of the measure, while Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania was the only Democrat to vote against it.
Republicans are going to be held accountable now and in November for their unquestioning support for a war of impulse and illusion that is costing Americans literally billions of dollars.
The only people in the world that are helping the Iranians right now are the Democrats. I think the military needs to feel our support right now. I think we have to look at the long game here, that a nuclear-armed Iran would be a huge threat to the future of Americans.
Democrats have vowed to bring another War Powers resolution before the Senate as early as next week, claiming that patience is fraying when it comes to the war in Iran. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Dr. Volker Stanzel, former German ambassador to China and senior distinguished fellow at SWP. Thank you so much, Dr. Stanzel, for joining us on the broadcast. Of course, now the thing to unpack here is President Trump, who said that the Iran war is very close to being over. And optimism, this is echoed by even his cabinet. In fact, J.D. Vance said that President Trump is seeking a grand bargain with Iran, but with the red lines which remain largely unchanged and Lebanon being a key sticking point from early on. How sustainable is any ceasefire or political settlement, in your opinion, Dr. Stanzel?
Well, there are both parties there who hope the ceasefire will turn into a lasting one. But whether that can happen, there are many reasons for doubt, because we've heard the same, especially from Donald Trump, who said that he will win the war in a short time, and then fuel prices will go down in the United States, etc. And it has not become true. But I see that both sides are in a position where they're both very weak and very easy in a situation where they might lose the whole war. And that is why I think they are prone to listen to people who try to suggest that they restart the negotiations between each other, like Pakistan, for example, also China and others. And of course, in the US, it is the domestic situation that we have that also exerts pressure on Donald Trump. I'll come to that in a minute, if you allow.
Absolutely, Dr. Stanzel. And from where we are, the leaders of Israel and Lebanon, we know that they will hold talks in Washington pretty soon. But, of course, Hezbollah remains a thorn in the negotiations. How do you anticipate that to feature in the upcoming talks? And how willing would Israel practically be to comply with the U.S. pulling back at this moment in the conflict?
That is a big obstacle to restarting the negotiations. It is also a big problem for finding a lasting solution between Iran and the United States. So we'll have to see how it turns out. But the fact that Donald Trump said he asked the two sides to continue their negotiations today shows there is some pressure from the United States. If that pressure is really strong enough also to convince the Israelis, who have been very hesitant to stop bombing Lebanon, if that is enough to get them back to the negotiation table remains to be seen. But as I said before, there is much pressure on Donald Trump. There's also lots of pressure on the Iranians, and maybe that in the end will help. If you look at the situation in the United States, well, you see there is the pressure on Donald Trump because of his conflict with the Pope, of his conflict with religion in general, saying he wants to eliminate the whole Iranian civilization. At the same time, fuel prices rise, the continuing trade problems, and that makes this party afraid about the midterm elections in November. If you have a president who is so aloof from all the problems that people feel, will that not hurt the Republican Party? So you have much pressure, not only from the situation on the ground in Iran, but also from the own party of Donald Trump. And if you look at Iran, well, Iran suffers a lot of pain because here inflation is somewhere close to 50, I think more than 50% presently. And that makes people suffer who detest the government of Revolutionary Guards anyway, and who cannot see there is a de-escalation coming that they might benefit from. So there is domestic trouble brewing in Iran, which also turns into a sort of pressure on the present government in Iran, which might also facilitate going back to the negotiation table in Islamabad.
Right, Dr. Stansel, and speaking of the pressure, and given the deep mistrust between Tehran and Washington, Iran's hardline political establishment is, of course, there in place, and then a leverage that it now holds in the Strait of Hormuz. Why would Tehran concede now, even though it has become militarily much weakened, but it still holds certain leverage at this moment? And, of course, the more important question is not who stands to gain from peace, but who has more to lose if this war drags on, according to you?
Well, first, about the Iranian situation, I don't think there's so much on a positive straight in the war. As you can see or deduct from the fact that they have now threatened to allow the Houthis in the Red Sea to attack international trade there. That shows that what they might do on the Strait of Hormuz is not sufficient to make headway militarily. On the other hand, they have to take into calculation that the Americans, with more than 50,000 troops now in the region, are able to inflict enormous damage on Iran, and mainly on the civilian population, which again would bring the predicament that the leaders find themselves in to an even worse situation for them, which exerts pressure on them. So I think, as I said before, Iran is hurting as much as the United States is, and there is enormous pressure on them to go the way to the negotiation table. Now, what could they win in a peace? I think for Iran, it is important to be able again to trade with its oil, with its raw materials, and also, of course, with the arms. It's like those it's selling to Russia, to get people to benefit from peace again in monetary currency, in real. But for the United States, it is something that is, from the point of view of the Republicans, even more important, which is to end the threat that the Republicans might lose the elections, the midterm elections in November. And that will be much, much easier if Trump can point out that he has not only won the war, won the negotiations.
Of course, Dr. Stansel, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but those are some very valid points there. And of course, we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops from here. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
You're welcome.